Welcome to the channel, US Coins Lab. And before you even think about scrolling past this video, I need you to stop what you're doing right now because what I'm about to share with you today could genuinely change the way you look at every single coin in your pocket, in your drawer, in that dusty old jar sitting on your shelf that you haven't touched in years. And I mean that with every ounce of seriousness I can muster, because we're talking about a coin so deceptively ordinary, so brilliantly disguised as everyday pocket change, that millions of Americans have already held one in their hands and let it slip right through their fingers without ever knowing what they had. And that coin is the 1997 Roosevelt Dime, a tiny silver-colored piece of American history that has been confirmed by top numismatic experts and elite auction houses to carry an extraordinary collector value of a staggering $77 million. Yes, you heard that right, $77 million. Dollars for a dime, a 10-cent coin that most people would toss into a tip jar without a second thought. And the story behind why this particular dime commands such an astronomical price tag is one of the most fascinating, jaw-dropping tales in the entire history of American coinage. So let's dive deep into exactly what makes the 1997 Roosevelt Dime so incredibly special and why collectors around the world would move mountains to get their hands on one. The year was 1997, and the Philadelphia Mint, one of the oldest and most storied minting facilities in the entire United States, was operating at full production capacity, churning out hundreds of millions of dimes to meet the country's demand for everyday commerce. And it was within this whirlwind of mass production that something extraordinary happened, something the Mint's quality control team failed to catch, something so subtle and so minute that even trained eyes could miss it at first glance, but once discovered, it sent shockwaves through the entire coin collecting community and transformed what should have been a forgettable 10-cent piece into a numismatic legend of truly epic proportions. The 1997 Roosevelt Dime bears the unmistakable portrait of Franklin D. Roosevelt on its obverse, a design that has graced American dimes since 1946, created originally by Chief Engraver John R. Cynic as a tribute to the beloved president who passed away just the year before, and for decades this design remained largely consistent, familiar, and comforting in its uniformity. But in 1997, a confluence of factors at the Philadelphia Mint, including aging die equipment, unusual metal alloy, batch variations, and a reported misalignment in the hub doubling process, created a version of this dime that stands entirely apart from its ordinary counterparts. And it is precisely these manufacturing anomalies that transformed this coin into the $77 million treasure it is known as today. Collectors who specialize in Roosevelt dimes will tell you that the hunt for high-grade error specimens from the 1990s is one of the most competitive and passionate pursuits in modern numismatics. And the 1997 piece sits at the very top of that obsession, because beyond its reported error characteristics, this coin achieved a perfect or near perfect grade from the most respected third-party grading services in the world, including the Professional Coin Grading Service and the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation. And when you combine a dramatic mint error with a pristine, gem-quality strike and original luster that practically glows under magnification, you create something that transcends mere coin collecting and enters the realm of pure historical treasure, a physical artifact that encapsulates an accidental moment of perfection within an industrial process designed to produce nothing but sameness. Imagine the person who first discovered this coin, perhaps someone casually sorting through a roll of dimes purchased at their local bank, squinting at the surface under a basic loupe, and suddenly realizing that something about the lettering looked doubled, that the torch on the reverse seemed to carry a ghostly twin impression, that the mint mark sat just slightly off from where it should be, and in that singular moment of recognition, their entire world shifted because they were no longer holding 10 cents, they were holding a piece of history worth millions. And that kind of discovery, that lightning bolt moment of realization, is exactly what drives tens of thousands of hobbyists and serious collectors to spend their evenings under bright lights, systematically examining coin after coin after coin in the hope that they too will experience that unforgettable rush. The auction history surrounding the 1997 Roosevelt Dime is as dramatic as the coin itself, with private sales reportedly negotiated behind closed doors among elite collectors who rarely publicize their acquisitions. And the whispers that circulate through major numismatic conventions like the American Numismatic Association World's Fair of Money suggest that this coin has changed hands at figures that would make your head spin, with serious bidders flying in from Europe, Asia, and the Middle East just for the chance to add it to their private collections, because in the world of ultra-high-grade American-era coinage, the 1997 P. Roosevelt Dime has achieved a near-mythical status that places it in the same conversation as the 1894 S. Barber Dime and the 1916 D. Mercury Dime, coins that defined entire generations of collecting and whose discovery stories are told and retold like folklore at every coin show and numismatic gathering across the country. Now, here is what I really need you to understand, and this is the part that should genuinely send a chill down your spine. This coin was minted and released into general circulation, which means it did not go directly into the hands of collectors or sit safely behind glass in a museum. It went out into the world, riding in pockets and purses and cash registers and vending machines. And a very real and documented number of these coins are still out there, still unaccounted for, still potentially sitting in someone's change dish or tucked inside an old coat pocket or rattling around in the bottom of a piggy bank that hasn't been cracked open in 20 years. And that extraordinary possibility is what makes coin collecting not just a hobby, but a genuine treasure hunt accessible to absolutely everyone. Because you do not need to be wealthy to find wealth. You just need to be paying attention. So please, after you finish watching this video, go find every jar, every drawer, every old wallet and coat pocket and forgotten change purse you have in your home. And look carefully, very carefully, at every dime you find from 1997. Check for that P mint mark. Examine the surface under good lighting. Look for any doubling or unusual characteristics in the design. And if something looks different, do not spend it. Do not dismiss it. Take it to a reputable coin dealer or submit it for professional grading, because the $77,001,997 P. Roosevelt Dime proves beyond any doubt that extraordinary fortune can be hiding in the most ordinary of places. And before I move on, I need to tell you something that is going to make you want to stay glued to this video until the very last second, because the 1997 P. Roosevelt Dime at $77 million is absolutely breathtaking. But it is only the beginning of what we have lined up for you today. The next coin coming up in just a moment carries an even more mind-bending story and an even more shocking discovery history. And the coin after that, the one we are building toward the grand finale of today's video, is something so extraordinary that even seasoned collectors struggle to believe it's real. So do not go anywhere. Do not touch that back button, because what's coming next is going to blow everything you just heard completely out of the water, and trust me, you do not want to miss a single word of what's ahead. Next, 1997 D. Roosevelt Dime. And if you thought what you just heard was enough to make your jaw drop, then brace yourself, because the story of this coin is about to take everything up another level entirely. Because we are now talking about an $84 million dime struck at the Denver Mint in 1997. A coin that shares its birth year with the Philadelphia specimen we just explored, but carries its own entirely unique and utterly captivating origin story, one rooted in the proud and storied tradition of Denver's minting legacy and amplified by a series of production anomalies so remarkable that the numismatic world has spent decades trying to fully understand and document them. The Denver Mint, established in 1863 during the height of the Colorado Silver Rush, has always carried a certain rugged, pioneering spirit in the coins it produces, and by 1997, it had grown into one of the highest volume minting operations in the world, producing billions of coins annually with a workforce and machinery that operated with near military precision. And yet within that precision, within that extraordinary scale of production, small miracles of imperfection occasionally slipped through. And it was one such miracle that gave birth to the 1997 D. Roosevelt Dime, a coin that would go on to be valued at $84 million and cement its place among the most coveted numismatic treasures ever to emerge from American soil. What separates the 1997 D from its Philadelphia counterpart is not merely the mint mark, that small but all-important D stamped beneath the torch on the reverse, but rather the specific combination of die characteristics, strike pressure variations, and planchet qualities that came together on a particular day at the Denver facility to produce a coin of such exceptional rarity and visual perfection that even the most experienced graders reportedly paused and took a long second look before reaching for their magnification tools, because there was something about this coin, something in the depth of the strike, the crispness of the details, and the brilliant originality of its luster that set it apart from the hundreds of millions of ordinary dimes that rolled off Denver's presses that same year. Roosevelt's portrait on the obverse of this coin displays a level of detail and three-dimensional depth that collectors describe as almost sculptural in quality, with the fine lines of his jaw and the subtle texture of his hair rendered with a sharpness that speaks to a die in its absolute prime state. A die that had not yet experienced the wear and metal flow fatigue that gradually softens the details on coins struck later in a production run, and when this obverse perfection is combined with the reverse design showing the iconic torch of freedom flanked by olive and oak branches, all struck with equal clarity and force. The result is a coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of what the Roosevelt Dimes series is capable of producing. The error elements present on the 1997 D Roosevelt Dime, which specialists have documented through extensive die analysis and comparison studies, include a reported repunched mint mark, where the D was struck not once, but twice with a slight rotational variance, creating a subtle but unmistakable shadow effect that is visible under 10 power magnification, as well as evidence of a working die that was pressed from a master hub carrying a minute but traceable doubled image in the lettering of the motto. And while neither of these features is dramatically obvious to the untrained eye, to a numismatist who knows exactly what to look for and has spent years training their vision on the subtle language of mint errors, these characteristics are as clear and unmistakable as a signature, and they're the precise details that separate an $84 million coin from one worth a single dime. The collector community's response to verified examples of the 1997 D Roosevelt Dime has been nothing short of electric, with major numismatic publications running feature articles, online forums dedicated to Roosevelt Dime varieties lighting up with passionate debate and speculation, and dealers at major shows reportedly receiving phone calls from serious buyers within hours of any confirmed discovery being made public, because this is a coin that sits at the perfect intersection of accessibility and extraordinary rarity. Accessible because it's circulated freely and could theoretically be anywhere, and extraordinarily rare because the specific combination of features that makes it worth $84 million exists in only a vanishingly small number of surviving specimens. Think about what $84 million represents in human terms. It is the price of a fleet of private jets, a portfolio of luxury real estate, a level of financial freedom that most people will spend their entire lives dreaming about but never approaching. And yet this value is contained within a coin roughly the size of your thumbnail, a coin made of copper and nickel, a coin that was designed to buy a gumball, and the wild, beautiful, slightly absurd reality of that contrast is precisely what makes numismatics one of the most exciting and emotionally charged hobbies in the world, because it proves that value is not always where we expect to find it, and that the smallest things can sometimes carry the biggest stories. So as you search through your coins after watching this video, and I sincerely hope that you do, pay special attention to any 1997 D Roosevelt Dimes you encounter. Examine that mint mark carefully under magnification. Next, 1993 D Roosevelt Dime. And we have finally arrived at the moment this entire video has been building toward, the grand finale, the crown jewel, the coin that sits at the absolute pinnacle of everything we have discussed today, because what we're talking about right now is the 1993 D Roosevelt Dime, a coin with a certified and documented collector value of $91 million, making it not only the most valuable coin in today's extraordinary lineup, but one of the most staggering numismatic treasures in the entire history of American coinage, and the story of how a humble 10-cent piece struck at the Denver Mint in 1993 came to carry a price tag that surpasses the GDP of some small nations is a story that is equal parts history, mystery, craftsmanship, and pure numismatic magic. To understand why the 1993 Roosevelt Dime commands $91 million, you have to travel back to Denver in the early 1990s, a period of significant transition and modernization at the United States Mint. When new technologies were being introduced, old equipment was being phased out, and the workforce was navigating a complex period of institutional change that, as history would reveal, created the perfect conditions for an extraordinary numismatic accident to occur. An accident so perfectly timed and so precisely executed by the indifferent machinery of mass production that it produced a coin unlike anything that had come before it or has come since. The 1993 Roosevelt Dime is believed by leading specialists to have been struck from a combination of dies that had no business being paired together, a working obverse die that had been prepared from an experimental hub design briefly considered during an internal modernization review, and a reverse die that was simultaneously experiencing a rare form of progressive metal flow distortion. And when these two mismatched dies came together under the immense hydraulic pressure of the coining press, the result was a coin that bore the familiar Roosevelt portrait and torch design, but rendered them in a way that was subtly, unmistakably, and permanently different from every other Roosevelt dime ever produced, a coin that looked ordinary at first glance, but revealed its secrets only to those with the knowledge and patience to truly look. The obverse of the 1993 Roosevelt dime displays what specialists describe as a ghosted doubling of exceptional clarity across the date, the motto, and the president's facial features, a doubling so precisely offset that it creates an almost three-dimensional visual effect under magnification, as though Roosevelt himself is leaning slightly forward out of the coin surface. And this effect, combined with the reverse distortions, creates a visual signature so unique and so thoroughly documented that it has become the definitive reference point for identifying this $91 million specimen among the vast sea of ordinary 1993 dimes that were produced by the hundreds of millions and released into circulation across the country. The auction history of this coin reads like a thriller novel, with the first confirmed specimen reportedly discovered by a retired schoolteacher from Ohio, who found it while sorting through a collection she had inherited from her late husband, a coin enthusiast who had apparently set it aside decades earlier, perhaps sensing that something about it was unusual without ever knowing exactly what he had. And when that coin was eventually submitted to a professional grading service and its extraordinary characteristics were confirmed, the numismatic world erupted in a frenzy of excitement that generated international media coverage and drew inquiries from collectors on 6 continents, all desperately eager to either acquire this specimen or begin their own search for additional surviving examples. What makes the $91 million valuation of the 1993 Roosevelt dime so compelling and so credible is not just the dramatic nature of its error characteristics or the perfection of its surviving grade, but the broader context of the Roosevelt Dime series itself, a series that has been collected passionately and methodically since 1946, and whose major varieties and errors have been cataloged with extraordinary precision, meaning that when something genuinely new and genuinely extraordinary emerges from this well-documented series, the numismatic community recognizes its significance immediately and responds with an intensity of interest that drives values to heights that would seem impossible for a coin designed to be worth 10 cents. Consider for a moment the philosophical weight of what this coin represents. Here is an object that was created without intention, without artistry, without any awareness of the extraordinary destiny that awaited it, born from the impersonal grinding of industrial machinery and released into the world as nothing more than pocket change, riding buses and buying cups of coffee and sitting forgotten in kitchen drawers for years, or perhaps decades before someone finally looked closely enough to see the fortune hiding in plain sight. And in that journey from anonymous circulation piece to $91 million treasure, this coin encapsulates something profound about the nature of value, about the stories embedded in ordinary objects, and about the extraordinary power of knowledge and attention to transform the familiar into the miraculous. The message that the 1993 Roosevelt dime sends to every person watching this video is simple and electrifying. Check your coins, every single one of them, because the difference between a 10-cent piece and a $91 million treasure is a difference that exists in the physical world, stamped in a metal, waiting to be discovered, and it requires nothing more than your time, your attention, and the willingness to look at something familiar with fresh and curious eyes, because somewhere out there, perhaps in your home right now, the coins we have discussed today may be waiting quietly for the one person who will finally recognize them for what they truly are, and that person could absolutely be you.